White ceiling, a room colder than any room should be. A mask lowers onto your face, and a calm voice tells you to count backward from 10. 10, 9, 8, and then nothing. That gap, the black space between 8 and waking up in recovery, is the strangest deal a human being ever agrees to. You disappear, and you trust a stranger to bring you back. Almost every time they do. But not every time. Sometimes the lights come back on in the middle, and the person lying on that table can't tell a single soul. This is what happens when you wake up during surgery. And the most disturbing part isn't the waking up. It's a number, buried in the research that says this has probably already happened to far more people than will ever know it. Maybe even to you. Let's start with what anesthesia actually is. Because you think it's sleep. It isn't. When you sleep, you drift. You dream. A loud enough sound pulls you straight back. General anesthesia is nothing like that. It's closer to being switched off, a controlled, reversible coma. Drugs flood your brain and quiet the electrical storm that makes you you, until the machine that generates your entire experience of being alive simply stops. You're not resting. You're gone. And gone has an on switch that someone else is holding. Here's the part almost nobody realizes. General anesthesia isn't one drug doing one thing. It's a balancing act of separate jobs. Switch off consciousness, erase memory, kill pain, and stop your body from moving. That last one matters more than you think. A surgeon needs you perfectly still. A twitch at the wrong moment can be catastrophic. So they give you a paralytic, a drug that shuts down every voluntary muscle you have, your legs, your hands, your eyelids, your voice. For almost all of human history, none of this existed. Before 1846, every single operation was performed on a wide-awake human being. You were held down by strong men, and you felt all of it. Then, in an operating theater at Massachusetts General Hospital, a room now called the Ether Dome, a man named William Morton put a patient to sleep with ether and the surgeon cut without a scream. We had invented a miracle. Actually, we'd invented two at once. A way to be unconscious and a way to be paralyzed. The nightmare begins when only the second one works. So how often does it happen? In 2004, a multi-center study across American hospitals, led by Peter Siebel and published in Anesthesia and Analgesia, put the number at roughly 1 in 1,000. Then came the big one. In 2014, the Royal College of Anesthetists ran the largest study of its kind ever attempted. The 5th National Audit Project, led by Jaideep Pandit and Tim Cook. They gathered every reported case across the UK and Ireland for a year. Patients who remembered waking up during their operation. About 1 in 19,000. That sounds vanishingly rare. Until you scale it. Hundreds of millions of operations happen every year on this planet. 1 in 19,000 still means thousands of people, every year opening their eyes on a table. And the study found the single biggest predictor of it happening. When a paralytic was used, the rate jumped to 1 in 8,000. When no paralytic was used, it dropped to 1 in 136,000. Paralysis. The exact thing meant to keep you safe and still is the thing most likely to leave you awake and trapped. So what does it actually feel like? The project collected the accounts, and they follow a pattern. It usually starts with sound because hearing is the last sense to fade and the first to return. You hear the clink of metal instruments, you hear voices, you hear the surgical team talking casually about their weekend over your open body, and then you try to move. You tell your hand to make a fist. Nothing happens. You try to open your eyes, turn your head, make any sound at all, and the paralytic has taken every one of them. Some patients felt the incision, some felt the breathing tube in their throat and were certain they were suffocating, awake, aware, and sealed inside a body that will not answer a single command. Trapped. And here is the cruelest twist of all. From the outside, you look completely peaceful, because the same drug freezing your scream is freezing every visible sign of your panic. No flinch, no movement, a heart rate the anesthetist might read as perfectly fine. You are screaming as loud as a human being can scream. And the room stays silent. The drug that hides you from the surgeon's knife also hides your suffering from the only people alive who could stop it. Which raises a genuinely dark question. If a paralyzed patient can't signal anything, how could we ever know how often people are actually conscious in there? For decades, we couldn't. Then, in 1977, an anesthetist named Michael Tunstall found a way around it. Just before the paralytic reaches the arm, you inflate a blood pressure cuff around it like a tourniquet. The paralytic never gets past the cuff. That one hand can still move. So mid-surgery, you can ask the patient a question. If you can hear me, squeeze my hand. It's called the isolated forearm technique. Then, in 2017, a team led by Robert Sanders at the University of Wisconsin ran this across 6 hospitals in multiple countries, on 260 patients right after they'd been put under and intubated. They asked them to squeeze. Nearly 1 in 22 squeezed back, conscious, listening, responding to a voice. And 5 of them squeezed a second time, the signal the researchers had set up to mean, "I am in pain." Now here's the sentence that should stop you cold. When every one of those patients was asked afterward whether they remembered anything, not a single one did. None. They had been awake, some of them hurting, and the drugs had wiped the recording clean before it ever reached long-term memory. Erased. So the real number was never the 1 in 19,000 who remember. Those are just the ones the amnesia failed to catch. The far larger group is the people who surface for a moment, hear the voices, maybe feel the blade, and are chemically prevented from ever keeping the memory, which means the surgery you had years ago, the one you think of as a clean, dreamless nap, you have no way of knowing you weren't awake for part of it. You simply weren't allowed to keep it. And even no memory isn't quite the end, because there are 2 kinds of memory. The kind you can consciously recall, and the kind your body keeps without ever telling you. Some patients who remember absolutely nothing still walk out carrying something. Nightmares they can't explain. A jolt of dread at the smell of a hospital. Symptoms that look exactly like post-traumatic stress with no memory attached for them to point to. The mind deleted the file. The body kept the receipt. Now, breathe. Because you will almost certainly have surgery one day, and I won't lie to you to scare you. This is rare. Anesthesia is one of the safest, most quietly miraculous things medicine has ever built. Billions of people have crossed that black void and come back with nothing but a lost afternoon. The paralytic-only horror is the rare corner of an already rare event, and it clusters in the highest stakes moments. Emergencies, trauma, cesareans, where a full dose of anesthetic could actually kill you, so they carefully give less. And medicine takes it seriously. Brain monitors now track the electrical hush of an anesthetized mind. Protocols have tightened. That entire national study exists precisely because anesthetists went hunting for their own worst failures, on purpose. The point was never to make you fear the table. It's to understand what the table really is. Because think about what you agree to. A stranger asks you to count backward from 10, and somewhere around 8, you hand them the single most private thing you will ever own, your own consciousness, and you trust them to switch it off, open your body, and switch it back on. No other animal on Earth would do this. A dog senses a threat and runs. You lie down and volunteer for oblivion. And the astonishing thing was never the rare times it fails. It's that nearly every single time it works. That we found a way to leave ourselves entirely and come back. That billions of people have stepped off the edge of their own mind and returned. You'll do it too one day. 10, 9, 8. And then a nurse gently saying your name in a warm, bright room. An afternoon gone. And you, still you. The most ordinary miracle there is. Human.